Hello everyone, I am the next reporter, Cheryl Palado. So, ang ako i-discuss karon is ang illustration about sale price above fair value. So, unsa ang buhaton if mas dako ang sale price kaysa sa fair value? So, let's now have the illustration. So, on January 1, 2020, an entity sold a building with remaining life of 20 years and immediately leased it back for 5 years. So sale price 20 million, fair value of building 18 million, carrying amount of building 10.8 million, annual rental payable at the end of each year 1.5 million, implicit interest rate 12%, present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 at 12% for 5 periods is 3.60. So IFRS 16 paragraph 101 provides that if the sale price does not equal the fair value of the underlying asset, the seller lessee shall make adjustment to measure the sale price at fair value. Any excess sale price over fair value shall be accounted for as additional financing provided by the buyer lessor to seller lessee. So if mas dako si sale price kaysa sa fair value, so ang need na to buhaton is i-adjust para ma-equal na si sale price ug si fair value. So diri sa atong illustration, ang buhaton nato na is kwaon na to ang excess ni sale price. So si sale price na 20 million i-minus kay fair value na 18 million. So ang excess sale price nato is 2 million. So kana si 2 million na excess dapat i-account na siya ni buyer lessor as additional financing dito kay seller lessee. Tapos i-record ang underlying asset at its fair value which is 18 million. Basta kung mas dako si sale price kay pasabot ana dako mas dako ang nabayad ni buyer lessor dito kay seller lessee. So ang buhaton lang is kuhaon ang natang excess tas account as additional financing tapos underlying asset kay ma-record na at its fair value. So ang additional financing day guys kay mura siya another transaction na naitabo between kay buyer lessor and seller lessee. Balimura lang siya o ipautang na lang ni buyer lessor kay seller lessee kay sobra man niyang nabayad. Maong additional financing na siya. So since nakuha na nato ang excess na account na as additional financing tapos si underlying asset kay na record na at its fair value. So ang next nato buhaton kay kuha na to ang cost of right of use asset. So, nasama siya pagkuha. So, kini si present value of lease liability na 5.4 million. Ang ginsa na siya pagkuha. Modern siya ang initial lease liability na to. Diba ang annual rental payment na to kay 1.5 million. I-times na siya dito sa present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 at 12% for 5 period na 3.60 ang 5.4 million. So, kana siya si 5.4 million i-minus na siya dito sa additional financing katong excess na 2 million. So, ang present value na dyan nato sa lease liability nato related sa rentals is 3.4 million. Tapos ka na si 3.4 million, i-divide siya sa 18 million na fair value. Tapos i-times siya sa carrying amount na 10.8 million. So, ang cost of right of use asset nato is 2,040,000. So, next na to kwaon is i-determine na to ang gina-recognize on right transferred to buyer lessor. Sa para makuha na siya, si fair value nga 18 million, i-minus siya sa carrying amount na 10.8 million. So, ang total gain is 7.2 million. Pero dili pa na siya mao ang i-recognize na gain. So, 18 million na fair value minus sa katong present value na lease liability na 3.4 million equals to 14,600,000. So, kana si 14,600,000, mana siya ang right transfer to buyer lessor. So, i-divide na siya sa 18 million, tapos i-times sa katong total gain na 7.2 million. So, ang kalabasan ana is 5,840,000. Mana siya ang gain na i-recognize. Then, next na, after na ito mag-determine ang gain na ma-recognize, mag-journal entry na ta. So, books of seller lessee. So, first is to record the sale and leaseback. So, debit cash 20 million, debit right of use asset na 2,040,000, credit building 10.8 million, Lease liability 5.4 million, gain on right transferred 5,840,000. Next is to record the annual rental for the first year. So, debit interest expense 648,000. So, yun sana siya pagkuha si 5.4 million na initial lease liability, i-time siya sa 12% na interest rate. Tapos, next is debit lease liability 852,000. Then, credit cash 1.5 million. Next is to record the annual depreciation of right-of-use assets. So, debit depreciation 408,000, credit accumulated depreciation 408,000. So, yun sana siya. Katong right-of-use asset na 2,040,000 i-divide sa 5 years. So, next is books of buyer lessor. So, ang gamitan din natin sa pag-record guys is ang operating lease model because the lease term is 5 years or only 25% of the 20-year useful life of the underlying asset. Tapos, the present value of lease liability related to rentals kay 3.4 million lang, less than 90% siya sa fair value na 18 million. So, ang first na to record is ang purchase of the building. So, debit building 18 million, debit financial asset 2 million, credit cash 20 million. Next is to record the annual rental related to lease. So, cash 944,444, credit rent income 944,444. So, yun sana siya pagkuha. Tanaw lang nato dire ang sa allocation of annual rental nato. The present value na 3.4 million gi-divide sa initial lease liability na 5.4 million tapos git times siya sa annual payment na 1.5 million. Next na i-record is ang annual rental related to financing. So, debit cash 555,556, credit financial asset 315,556, interest income 240,000. So, yun sa nagikuha si 555,556, si present value sa financial asset na 2 million to excess, gi-divide sa 5.4. Tapos, gi-time sa 1.5 million. Tapos, ginsa na pagkuha si 240,000 interest income. Muna siyang interest income for 2020. So, si 2 million, gi-times na siya sa 12% na interest rate. Tapos, kana si 315,556, muna siya ang principal payment. Gi-minus lang na si 555,556 sa 240,000. So, muna siyang 315,556 na siya. So, next na i-record is ang depreciation sa building. So, debit depreciation 900,000, credit accumulated depreciation 100,000. So, ganyan na siya pagkuha. The fair value ng 18 million, gi-divide sa 20 kay 20 years man. So, that's all guys sa illustration, no? So, let's now have another solving. Let's try to solve this example problem, no? Problem 15-4. So, kini si problem 15-4 guys, kay same lang siya sa illustration nato, no? Ang sale price niya is above fair value. So, ang pag-solve ani same lang gid gyapon, pero mag-try lang ta para mas makasabot gyud. At the beginning of current year, Petro Company sold a machine and immediately leased it back. So the following data relate to the sale and leaseback transaction. So sale price at above fair value 6 million, fair value of machine 5 million, carrying amount of machine 4.5 million, annual rental payable at the end of each year 800,000, remaining life of machine 10 years, lease term 4 years, implicit interest rate 8%, present value of an ordinary annuity of fund at 8% for 4 periods is 3.312. There is no transfer of title to the lessee nor purchase option that is reasonably certain to be exercised. So, required. So, natili makabuok. So, first is to compute the initial lease liability. Second is to compute the cost of right-of-use asset. Next is to determine the gain and right transferred to buyer lessor. Next is to prepare journal entries on the books of seller lessee for the current year. And lastly, prepare journal entries on the books of buyer lessor for the current year. So, to solve for the initial lease liability, Ang annual rental payable at the end of each year na 800,000, it times lang na siya dito sa present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 at 8% for 4 periods na 3.312. So, ang initial lease liability na to is 2,649,600. So, next is to compute the cost of right of use asset. So, first, kuhaan sa nato sa excess sale price over fair value. So, sale price na 6 million, i-minus siya sa fair value na 5 million. So, ang excess sale price nato is 1 million. Next is the present value of lease liability na 2,649,600, i-minus na siya sa excess na as additional financing na 1 million. So, present value of lease liability related to rentals na to is 1,649,600. Tapos, kana si 1,649,600, i-divide na siya sa fair value nga 5 million. Tapos, i-times sa carrying amount of 4.5 million. So, ang cost of right of use asset na to is 1,484,640. So, next is to determine the gain on right transfer to buyer-lessor. So, first is si fair value nga 5 million, i-minus siya sa carrying amount na 4.5 million para makuha ang total gain which is 500,000. Tapos, si fair value na 5 million, i-minus sa siya sa right retained by seller lessee na 1,649,600. So, ang right transferred to buyer lessor na to is 3,350,400. Tapos, kana sa 3,350,400, i-divide siya sa 5 million na fair value, tapos i-times sa total gain na 500,000. So, the gain to be recognized is 335,040. So, ang next na requirement is prepare journal entries on the books of seller lessee for current year. So, first na record is ang sale and leaseback. So, debit cash, 6 million. Debit right of use asset, 1,484,640. Credit machinery, 4.5 million. Lease liability, 2,649,600. Gain and right transfer, 335,040. Next is to record the annual rental for the first year. So, debit interest expense, 211,968. Debit lease liability, 588,032. Credit cash, 800,000. So, yun sa pagkuha sa interest expense, katong initial lease liability na to na 2,649,600, gitime siya sa 8%. Next is to record the annual depreciation of right of use asset. So, debit depreciation, 371,160. Credit accumulated depreciation, 371,160. So, ginsa mo na siya pagkuha. So, ang katong right of use asset ni na 1,484,640, gi-divide siya sa 4 years, kay 4 years man ang lease term. So, the last requirement is to prepare journal entries on the books of buyer-lessor for the current year. Books of buyer-lessor. So, first is to record the purchase of the machinery. So, debit machinery, 5 million. Debit financial asset, 1 million. Credit cash, 6 million. Next is to record the annual rental related to lease. So, debit cash, 498,668. Credit rental income, 498,668. So, ganun na siya pagkuha. So, ang present value na to sa rental income na 1,649,600, gi-divide siya sa katong initial lease liability na to na 2,649,600. Tapos, i-time siya sa 800,000 na annual payment. So, next is to record the annual rental related to financing. So, debit cash, 301,932. Credit financial asset, 221,932. Credit interest income, 80,000. So, yun sa manipagkuha si 301,932. So, ang present value ni financial asset na 1 million, gi-divide siya sa 2,649,600, tapos gitain siya sa 800,000 na annual payment. Next is si 80,000 interest income. So, mao ni siya ang interest income sa first year. So, kato si financial asset na 1 million, gitimes na siya sa interest rate na 8%. So, next is, giusan ni pagkuha si 221,932. So, giminus na si 301,932 sa 80,000. So, next is to record the depreciation of the machinery. So, debit depreciation, 500,000. Credit accumulated depreciation, 500,000. So, ganyan sa mga siya pagkuha. Katong fair value nga 5 million, gidivide siya sa 10 years na useful life. Maong 500,000. So that's all for my report. Thank you.